My name is Trevor Gauntz, and I am in the process of learning as much as I can about pair programming. To help me in my quest, Dr. John MacCormick, a well-published computer science professor at Dickinson College, has agreed to a video interview to help me learn more about pair programming. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Trevor.
Could you please give us some background on your experience as a computer science educator?
Yeah, sure. I've been lucky enough to be at Dickinson College for about 12 years now, and I teach we have a small computer science faculty there, so I end up teaching the whole range of courses that we offer, more or less. And I especially enjoy teaching introductory computer science courses, which involve an introduction to Java programming, amongst other things, for us. And so, yes, basically I have 10 or 12 years of experience teaching at all levels in the college level curriculum. I've also done a bit of consulting for high school mathematics and computer science curricula in the last 2 or 3 years. That's another one of my interests.
Okay. Do you currently use pair programming with your students?
Yes, I do, and especially in those introductory courses, the first 1 or 2 courses in our sequence at Dickinson College. We use it almost exclusively for both graded and ungraded laboratory work for the students, where they're given a sort of medium to long assignment that would take a typical pair of students, say, 2 hours to complete. We use that extensively for, probably between 5 and 10 assignments in each course.
Okay. Are the students paired differently for each assignment, or do you keep the same all the assignments?
Different instructors take different approaches to this, and it's really down to personal preference and intuition as to the best way of doing that. As you know, some of the research that I've done with some other colleagues at Dickinson in the past has looked at different ways of assigning those pairings. And one of the things that we found was that for some purposes, it can actually be beneficial to pair students based on their level of experience or perhaps their level of ability, to pair students of a similar ability with each other. And what we've seen is that this actually, perhaps a little counterintuitively, helps all of the students, and especially the ones with less experience. It helps them to learn more on average compared to simply randomly assigning the students. Or even you may think that a different strategy would be to assign an experienced student with an inexperienced one on the basis that the inexperienced student would learn from the more experienced student. That does happen in practice, but what we've found is that on average, the amount of learning is less in that case compared to if students of similar levels of experience or ability are paired together. And although we haven't done enough detailed research to have empirical evidence of the mechanism for that, I think one pretty plausible guess is simply that if you do have one experienced member of a pair and one inexperienced one, then at least some proportion of the time the experienced member is likely to take over, do something pretty quickly, just say, oh, I know how to do that, you just click here, do this, change that, and now it's working. And so it can be that the less experienced or less able member of the pair in that case is actually missing out on learning experiences that they can gain if they're working with someone of the same ability as themselves. In addition, as you can imagine, 2 very experienced students working together, they can blast through some of the more standard parts of the assignment and move on to an extension or stretch goal, and in that way they can also gain additional benefits that they may not have got from, say, random assignments. Having said that, there's many other considerations that instructors usually take into account when making pair programming assignments. Sometimes it's nice to give students a choice of who they would like to work with, because obviously that increases their comfort level and may help with their confidence. Other times there are simply practical considerations. Someone didn't show up. You can't always have the exact kind of setup that you would like as an instructor. So all sorts of practical things come into play here, as well as the fact that you want partners to build up a rapport, so it can be nice to have them working together in the same pair for a few weeks in a row. On the other hand, it's good to change things around every so often to give people a variety of experience. And also, frankly, if they do get stuck with someone with whom they don't interact particularly well, to give them an opportunity to move on and have a chance at finding someone else with whom they interact better.
Okay, great. You covered that pretty thoroughly. Some of the benefits of pair programming.
Sure. So I already mentioned some of the benefits that can accrue. Whether or not you are assigning pairs by ability or experience, or randomly, or just as self-selected by the students themselves, regardless of any of those methods, there is plenty of evidence from the computer science literature in the last 15 or 20 years that there are benefits no matter what for learning at the college level. And I believe this transfers also to the high school level, although I have not personally seen a lot of research done specifically getting empirical evidence at the high school level for this. But we can hypothesize what the mechanisms are, so we know that it improves learning. Why does it do that? I think one reason is that something that we all know about from our own experience with computer programming and working with computers is that every so often you just encounter a little roadblock or bug or problem, or you don't know how to do something, and you just get stuck. And you can sort of be bashing your head against a brick wall, or reading documentation, or maybe you misunderstood something fundamental, or maybe you got an unhelpful compiler error message, something like that. And it's just turns out that with two pairs of eyeballs instead of one pair, you are much more often able to get past those little roadblocks and make progress and enjoy and grow into the rewarding aspects of computer science and computer programming without suffering as much of the frustrations that we have all experienced from time to time. So I think that's one very practical benefit, even though it may not sound very deep or meaningful in terms of education terms. Just the sheer ability to move past roadblocks actually does help quite a bit. And this actually has an ancillary benefit for the instructor. You can imagine an instructor perhaps with one teaching assistant with a class of 20, 40, 50 students, whatever it may be. If those students are all working individually on a lab assignment, then you've got that many students to get to every time they have a problem or some kind of issue that they want to discuss. If they're working in pairs, it's much more likely that the questions that come up that require the input from a teaching assistant or the instructor will be more substantive questions, and that way the students can benefit more when they are talking with an experienced instructor. They're more likely to be getting some kind of benefit from years of experience, insight, educational ideas, and creative thoughts, rather than simply, oh, you know, you need a semicolon there. So that's a couple of the benefits. Let me see if I can quickly think of anything else with pair programming. I think possibly computer science is well known as being a little intimidating for certain people. And for those people, I believe that it does help to be working with someone else. Psychologically, it's just a much more friendly mode of working. And so if there are people in the classroom that lack confidence or think, ooh, computer programming is scary or something like that, again, working with a partner, I think, can really help with that kind of thing and just build momentum and build confidence.
Okay. On the flip side of the benefits, what potential pitfalls should instructors watch out for when implementing pair programming?
Right. Well, when implementing it, so there's one piece of terminology that's often used with pair programming, and that is at any given instant in the pair, one of the participants can be labeled as the driver and one as the navigator. And so the driver is the person who's actually at the keyboard and controlling the mouse and is typing code or dragging and clicking or actively altering the interface in front of them. The navigator may have another screen up, they may have their own laptop open or a different monitor, or just be consulting documentation, or simply be advising the driver on what they should be doing. But the navigator does not have direct control of the input devices. And so one piece of advice that's often used for pair programming is that the students should be told about these roles explicitly so that they have them in their minds, and that it should be swapped periodically. And some instructors actually like to make a bit of a game out of this. You know, you can even set an alarm every 15 minutes or so. An alarm goes off and everyone, okay, move around now. It actually sort of brightens up the room a little bit and creates a bit of physical energy as people stand up and move chairs or whatever, or keyboards get passed over, something like that. That's not part of my personal style, although I've seen it used very effectively by others. I prefer to be a bit more low-key, but I'll wander around and make sure that people are swapping roles, and I'll say, oh, you know, how long have you been typing? Okay, maybe, you know, it's time to give your partner a turn. Let's swap it around now. But it is important to change those roles so that both students can benefit. I mean, there are benefits from both being driver and navigator. It's not as if the driver does all the work. That's definitely not the case. But they are different roles, and one benefits differently from both. And especially in cases where there may be a disparity between the two members of a partnership in terms of experience or ability, then that's when it's particularly important that the more experienced person isn't just at the keyboard the whole time, blasting the code out and leaving someone else straggling behind.
Okay. Are there any situations in which you would advise against pair programming?
For educational scenarios, not really. For the majority of assignments, this is somewhat debatable, but the way that we have typically done assessment at Dickinson is that we have multiple graded assignments during the semester that would be done by pair programming, but then we have so-called lab exams. So these are tests done under exam conditions in which students do a relatively extended programming assignment. So this would be a 2-hour exam typically, separate from the end of semester written exam. And this is something that would be done individually. So while students have worked on their main lab assignments, which are graded in pairs, they've also had shorter low-stakes homework assignments that they complete individually. So that's making sure that they can actually do things on their own. They know how to do everything. They've done it at least once by themselves, and they've had feedback on that because those low-stakes homework assignments are also graded. And then they have the lab exam, which does indeed test their ability as an individual to accomplish a more extended programming task. So again, I've seen in the literature, there's plenty of examples of college level courses that do not have this individual component, and there's plenty of evidence that the individual learning still occurs. But I think this is a great way to reinforce and really draw out the benefits of pair programming, is to also have students from time to time do an extended assignment or exam or whatever it might be as an individual, and that way they're sort of themselves making sure that they have all the skills that they need, and they can see that they can in fact do it on their own.
Okay. Final thoughts. Is there anything else you would like to add about pair programming?
Well, we've been talking exclusively about the educational environment here. And in fact, pair programming has been advocated as a serious software development technique in industry as well. It's part of, I mean, there are many buzzwords in software engineering, as you and the audience out there probably is aware of, such as agile programming and extreme programming. And some of these approaches, especially extreme programming, incorporate as one of their recommendations a certain amount of pair programming. So that's another thing that one can think about. Based on my experience and knowledge of the software industry and practice, pair programming is not widely used in industry And the obvious reason for that is the cost. I mean, it's expensive to hire a programmer anyway, and to hire two to do the same job that you might think one programmer could do, that's obviously going to be expensive. And so the question is, what benefits are you gaining from doing that? It seems that most of the software industry has concluded, although the program produced by two people working together is likely to contain less bugs and so on, it's probably not twice as good in terms of cost effectiveness. But it's something to sort of think about of, are there elements of pair programming and teamwork and cross-checking that you can draw out of the educational environment and into more serious software development workflows while retaining also reasonable cost effectiveness?
Okay, I think that's a pretty thorough review or interview of pair programming. I know that I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trevor. It's been a pleasure. This is something that I'm quite passionate about. And so I hope that's given a chance for you and your audience to think a little bit more about it as well. Thanks again.
Thank you.